Before we jump in, a quick note of who's behind this podcast. Imagine this. You're about to close this massive deal. You've been grinding for it. You're pumped. And then your customer's legal team decides to make things interesting. What happens if you get hacked? How do you protect your data? And then your brain just goes blank. That's the nightmare founders deal with all the time. That's actually what YSecurity solves, the sponsor of today's show. There are 40 plus security engineers who've actually done security at Apple, Uber, Microsoft, Robinhood, Brex, and so many more. And get this, you don't hire them, you rent them by the hour. No massive salaries, no expensive consultants, just real experts embedded in your company helping you get SOC 2, ISO, HIPAA, whatever it is that you need to close that big deal. Set a monthly cap, know exactly what you're spending, and close the deal. Head to ysecurity.io/startups and book your free strategy call. Your first 8 hours are free. 40 engineers, 1 full working day, totally free. Go take it. ysecurity.io/startups. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Security Podcast of Silicon Valley. I'm your host, John McLaughlin, and I am joined today with a very special guest, Jim LaRoe, the CEO and founder of Symphion. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thanks for having me, John.
So would you like to share with our audience what is Symphion?
Sure.
What do you guys do?
A little overview. We're Dallas, Texas based. We've been in business since 1999. We're currently the world leader in print fleet cybersecurity, protecting the printer endpoints across the United States predominantly. We're protecting print fleets that have over 30,000 printers in them for large healthcare systems down to print fleets with 300. It's a big gap in cybersecurity, so we thought that it would be important for your audience to hear some about that.
No, thank you so much for joining us and giving that nice, succinct summary of the type of cybersecurity that you guys think about and you guys tackle head on. And you mentioned you've been doing this since 1999.
Yes.
That's a hot minute.
Well, we started with the CMDB. You got a technical audience, right? So we had an alpha customer here in the Metroplex that needed what they described as a configuration management database, which they had an incident where somebody took down a server for maintenance, and it was really integral to their credit card processing worldwide. So they couldn't process credit cards for about 4 hours on a Saturday, 2 weeks before Christmas. So they needed something to put everybody on the same page for, what infrastructure mapped to which application. So we built them a CMDB with owning all the intellectual property rights to it. And then we moved out from there with all sorts of scanning techniques that we developed to do agentless scanning and fill that up and keep it filled. And then we got into the printers in 2015. We launched a managed CMDB service. Okay, so we manufacture the software and we deploy the people to operate it remotely. So that really went over very big with the large IT outsourcers who have reporting responsibilities to their customers, especially in healthcare. They have to keep track of all the assets through their life cycle and their configurations and their versions. So you got all that forward. One of the big printer manufacturers said, hey, can you come sell that to our customers? And we got into this alternative universe of the printer endpoint and how it's grown for, almost 40 years outside of IT and IS. And it's really a forgotten endpoint from a cybersecurity standpoint. And it has all sorts of issues with it from a protection standpoint that don't correlate to its brethren PCs and servers and other network element type endpoints. So that's how we kind of got to that space. And then we developed some software that will control the settings across all the makes, models, brands, ages, firmware versions of printers, because they're IoT devices with disparate operating systems and different manufacturers' hidden entry point API accesses with their own software. So we built the software and put it in a managed service to deliver a whole program of cybersecurity, cyber hygiene, basically, for that endpoint.
Oh, that's really interesting. I've always thought of like endpoint security. My mind just instantly goes into like laptops, employee laptops, contractor laptops. How do we manage like interns, printers? Though in the startup space, maybe sometimes get thrown into that category of like good problems to have. What's your ICP? Do you notice like a lot of highly regulated industries have strong security requirements around their printer endpoints?
That's a great question. One of the, complacency is the enemy of cybersecurity, right? Across all the industries, 20% of their endpoints are typically printers.
Wow.
And 99% of those are unprotected, sitting at factory defaults with a published administrator password on the network, all the ports open. Then you've got 360, all it takes is one of them to compromise the enterprise. And there are a number of ways with a 360-degree threat landscape on each one of those. They receive, transmit, process, and store the most sensitive data of the enterprise, and they offer lateral movement from our Red Hat guys that are out there doing ethical work, ethical hacking. That they store credentials for ancillary systems like your email system and your file server system and your credential system, and oftentimes at administrator godlike privilege level stored in the printer. So they're like a gold mine of data and access and lateral movement capability for the bad guys, both internal and external.
Wow. So I'm smelling things like a vulnerability lifecycle management remediation requirement creeping in here, as well as virus detection and endpoint AV systems, like maybe even being scoped to printers. Or if I'm operating a large organization, we have several offices and each office has like physical printers. As a security leader, how should I be thinking about printers?
Oh, it's a big question. Let's jump into that. So we got some time here on your
Yeah.
podcast. It's like, look,
Oh, yeah.
we got 40 years of these devices growing out of analog. They came from analog, and then you've got the belief everything's getting digitized away, right? It's not really happening like that. I mean, their tier one app support in hospital systems. You can't process patients without the printers. They're supporting admissions, discharge, the pharmacy, the labs, all the stuff that's out there, and its legacy, built in. I mean, some of these systems we've got one that over 30,000 printers in it, 150,000 other IoT endpoints, that kind of the stuff that's out there that's really big. It's been traditionally owned by supply chain and procurement. This endpoint has, not by IT, like your PCs, your laptops, your other, what you would consider, mainstream endpoints, right? IS has got their hands full.
Information security. Yeah. They're
They're
busy,
blamed, yeah, they're blamed for everything
stretched.
and responsible for everything, and not sleeping at night and stuff. And so this endpoint really is grown up in its own fiefdom outside of IT's purview and outside of information security. So it's kind of grown up where the manufacturers have competed with laying all these features on this camera and this paper sorter that are, business enabling features like giant hard drive, FTP, fax, email, web, all sorts of servers built into it, all these ports and capabilities open, and the security features available to harden them. But when they get placed on the network, they're not hardened. So we start the program with basic blocking and tackling. How many do I have? We're on calls all day, every day, and it's like, I've got 15,000 devices, I think. I don't know where they are, what they are. I don't have an accurate inventory. It needs to be maintained evergreen. We talked about IT asset lifecycle management. That's a challenge. Security configuration management, patching, blocking, like basic blocking and tackling for cyber hygiene, certificate management, monitoring, remediation, all that's out there. And the thing that comes in that printers are really the top of Mount Everest of complexity for IoT Internet of Things devices, okay? Because they've got 40 years runway of all this configurability and business enabling built-in solutions. They're this sleeping dog over there that's lying wait for something to happen. They have each manufacturer has a different OS for even in the same model sometimes. And they don't allow access to security settings or capabilities beyond their own software to manage them. So your
Please.
security professional knows it's out there. Okay. How do I, and it hasn't been a budget line item because there's a $40 billion a year industry that manages the printers. It's called managed print service industry. And it's a big one. And they supply the devices, the toner, the break fix, paper, all, care and feeding of that print service. They don't have a line item for security of the devices. They haven't had a line item. So what the IS folks are charged with is and they usually are challenged with budget arguments and board proof and risk and how do you prioritize this risk, and printers don't really oftentimes make it to the top of the list. And we've got some ways to help them with that, but it's 20% of their endpoints. So what we see a lot of them doing is running their vulnerability scanning software like your Rapid7 Qualys, Tenable, something like that, that's designed for the desktops against the printers, looking at the outward vulnerabilities and then saying, Mr. IT, Mr. CIO, go fix it. And then they have issues of finding budget for doing that where there has been none. And they've got sometimes arguments politically with the supply chain and procurement that's been running that for a while. So
Yep.
the first thing they need to do is find, an owner for it that's willing to sponsor it, set a policy, and then enforce it. So it's easier said than done, but that's kind of where we're at in that market.
Wow. No, that's incredible. It's just something that I don't think crosses a lot of people's minds, maybe until it's too late. And, those smart devices, you can log into them. I'm sure they're just running like variants of some Unix based system.
Yeah.
They have to stay online. That means like SSH is on there. Who is going to take the time to strip down like all of those vulnerabilities? And then a printer, you just think of it as like, oh, it's that little thing that's over there. It sits there. And then like as the 0 days come out and as all of the other vulnerabilities come out, like there's that thing that's like you never really update it. You never really touch it unless you have like a deliberate intentional program. It sounds like you help take care of a lot of that. So
We take the lift, no operational lift. We'll do all the blocking and tackling required and we do 3-year contracts, per device pricing, inclusive. They can change the pricing out for the devices when they get new ones. It's a huge value. We just designed the program to fit the gap. And the challenge is with the customer politically. I'll give you some examples.
Please.
We were on a call with 15,000 printers in the print fleet. They thought, 15 to 16,000. That's a big difference, right? To not know where you have what you're using and everything. And those guys, it was on with the CISO of the company and it's a big hospital system. And our partner basically put the brakes on and said, hey, we've got to have a security profile because our partner's trying to sell them a 5-year managed print service contract. It's millions of dollars. And they're saying, we've got to have security. How are you going to secure all these disparate brands and models and locations? And how are you going to, harden them, monitor them, patch them, all the basic stuff that you need to do for cyber hygiene? How are you going to do that? And they said, well, we're partners with Symphion. And they're the world leader in this space. So they get us on the call and they're like, man, this is the best thing we've had. It's fantastic. Well, then they start negotiating their managed, and they said, we're not starting anything to get Symphion straight. So then they start negotiating their contract through supply chain and procurement. The GPO, the group purchasing organization that's in charge of that, redlines the security out. And the CISO has no juice on that because the supply chain has owned it. So, they're coming back around, but it's the whole managed print service industry is selling cost elimination in the print service because of the perception of digitization. And then you've got the whole printer manufacturers. Their job is to move their factory, and that includes move their devices and their toner and the things that they manufacture. Right. You've got those, and they build in features to do that and sell the features, but they don't enable themselves. So they have to be constant. We've got other examples where they've been hacked through a printer, big system, 11,000 devices hacked through a printer. We love you, Symphion. We want to go with you, where we're going to wait 2 years for a managed print service contract to be negotiated to include you in on that before we do a single thing. So, yeah, and it's really, this is for your audience, your IS audience. it's a quick win. I mean, think about it. You've got 20%, and we can give you published hacks. I mean, these devices are set to phone home back to the manufacturer on the network most of the time for updates and things like that. When would you ever do that with a good shot? You're not going to allow the unmonitored communications off your network by a product manufacturer unless it's sanctioned and you rule that, right? We've had others where they love the whole program, but they can only do passwords, only inventory and passwords components of it. So it's very clearly the forgotten endpoint. And this is where IoT is headed. I said it's the Mount Everest. Other IoT devices, we're doing cameras, we're doing power supplies, things like that are all hackable and entry points into the network out there as well. It's what can they do? They can make the company aware of it, establish controls, a policy, and then enforce it.
Sure. There's a business case to be made, right? If you have like PHI, if you have classified information, if you have like, I could imagine all sorts of things, anything that's not basically a totally air gapped space, you have risk, right? So
it's all that way though. 10 years ago, there were highly published hacks where they're hacktivists that went out there and they found, like one of them found 800,000 unprotected printers in the United States and sent out some anti-Semitic stuff to all the universities across the country, to 150,000 of them to print. You can print on the printer, you can hack it, and you're on the network. And then there was another one where Cyber News picked 28,000 of them and printed out how to protect your printer manuals on that. That's 10 years ago. Think about it now. I mean, they're looking for weak spots. They didn't even need AI back then. And now it's off the chain. And it's kind of like, I told one gal the other day on a show, it's like, look, it's like putting gasoline on a raging fire already, because you've got these vulnerabilities sitting there that are wide open, with the published administrator password on a lot of them on the network, but based upon the model. We're on the protect side, so we don't talk about hacking the device or anything like that, but the ethical hackers do the job. I mean, they've got it. They're like, man, if I want to fail somebody, I go after the printers every time.
Yeah, no, it's real. AI is just going to make everything happen that was going to happen anyway is going to happen much more quickly.
Agree.
So that increases the risk, that increases the cost of these breaches, and it's just going to happen much more quickly now too.
Yes.
That's why the risk is going to go up. I'm curious though, what's been your proudest day as an entrepreneur?
No, we're still looking forward to the proudest days. Every day we have successes and we have challenges. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, you've got all sorts of different challenges every day that arise. And you build process, you stay with the process, you adapt the process, you hire really good, smart people and empower them to do their work. I mean, all those things, you still have challenges, but
of course. Are you guys entirely bootstrapped?
We're making money, man. We've been in business 25 years. We're a very profitable company.
I mean, no outside investment? Or did you guys take outside investment?
We got with an accelerator down in Austin called Capital Factory a few years back, and worked with them a little bit, but the terms were not right for the investment community to dive in. We talked to some of the OEM manufacturers, the folks out there, because it's in their industry, but they have their own politics of software that they develop and things like that. And that's been a few years. That was a good experience though. Capital Factory out of Austin.
Yeah. Entrepreneurial activities just in general, they're tough. They're really gritty. And there's lots of really high highs and there's lots of really low lows, and like incubators and accelerators, those are all like great ways to just sort of ground ourselves, focus on the right problems as entrepreneurs. If it was easy, like everyone would do it, right? And it wouldn't be a big deal, but I think it is a big deal. So
one of the best things we got out of them, John, was they introduced us to the Small Business Innovation Research Award.
The SBIR?
Yeah, we won.
Yeah, that's perfect. Did you guys go for one of those SBIR grants?
We won 2 of them.
Congratulations, that's amazing.
The CISO for one of the armed forces was going to take us to stage 3 immediately, and then The CTO is our sponsor for that armed force, and he retired, and then a new one came in and had a different approach that they wanted to take, and I'm not sure they've done anything yet, but it's still, we still have the SIBRs, one for print fleet cybersecurity as a service, and the other, it's the same platform for IoT devices too, IoT information as a service, or cybersecurity as a service. And it's a comprehensive program just like that. So we have to adapt our technology and process to the multiple layers of confidentiality in the government for them to be able to adopt it. So that was the SIBR for us. But we won 2 of them, man. So we still have those. And that was a great introduction from the incubator there that we got. We got dialed into the federal government a little bit.
Excellent. Amazing. What did you do before you were an entrepreneur?
Lawyer, trial lawyer.
Trial lawyer. Wow. So
And
I bet you're just brutal with those negotiations.
oh, I don't know about that. I'm an engineer trained
You're an
in,
engineer at heart. Yeah.
engineer first and then went to the dark side. Yeah.
I see. I have lots of friends that did that. The computer science and like being good with like logic cuts over to law really well.
I guess, man. I don't know. It's a challenge. I mean, figuring out the human piece of it, the complacency piece in cybersecurity, we see this giant gap, and it's like, it's huge. And it's like, we've gotten the price down where it's all inclusive and affordable. And, we've got some just are like, depends on their maturity, I guess. Some are just like, yeah, we got to have it now. Let's go. And others are like, are you serious? There's no risk there or something, even though it's 20% of your endpoints. And we launched 2 new services. You're putting a press release out this week. One is an enterprise assessment. So the ones that have the hard case board member that can't believe that our printers are at risk, we do electronic assessment, process assessment, give them a board ready report in plain English that shows them the risk, scoring for how bad it is.
That sounds like a great starting point. Like just like measure before you cut sort of thing.
Yeah, it's we will fail everybody. I mean, it's just
Do you
bad.
have like a red team member like in the house that helps with some of that risk
No,
assessment?
we don't do that because we're we know what should be placed in the protection bucket, right? We know that it's a 20-point assessment. 10 points are electronic on a 500 device swath of the print fleet. And we'll take it soup to nuts, from everything from like hardening of the passwords internal to the device, the hardening, encryption of the hard drive, the USB port access for walk-up access to the device, because they all have that on them, for the Sony type hack, and it, and password hardening, all the configuration ports, things like that. And we'll develop that against our model, and then we look at the process too, because when they're adding it, they call it the IMAC-D process, the install, move around device, add, delete process, change the devices. What's their process? How are they recording that? The big problem that these big fleets have is they have newly added devices that aren't configured or patched or under the purview of the program. So our program, we investigate that process, how they're doing it now, and look at their CMDB, how they're maintaining that, things like that. How are they enforcing? Like a big deal in the industry, you got personal behavior, like clicking on an email or something that we all know about, right? In the print industry, the human behavior is when somebody works on a device, they reset it back to factory. So they could have the best configuration on the planet Earth, and the technician who's been trained in doing this for even 5-10 years, they're going to reset it back to factory defaults after they work on it. And how long does it take you to discover that? We discover our solution, we discovered it within hours, and we have standing change order remediate the same day. So it's like, how do you know that you've got a newly discovered device? Our software discovers device on subnet within an hour. So it's like, we look at the change in the devices, the change in the configuration of the devices. We investigate that and give them a report, because those things make them vulnerable, right? They make them at risk. They increase their risk. We score it, give them a report. go to work. You can build some consensus like that. And then the other offering we have to address that complacency is we've got a light version, which is inventory called Evergreen Inventory, which is lifecycle management of the devices, which with printers is really challenging because they swap them in and out. They're not in a data center like a server is with system administrators or anything like that. They're not PCs like users assigned to them or laptops or something like that that can see it. They're swapped out, and that device may be unconfigured. It's sitting on the network
Yep.
and they don't know
Yep.
about it, or they got a spare they added or something like that because the network drop doesn't communicate with the security group. We mesh all that together to give them that sort of information. So we've got evergreen inventory and password management. So everybody understands passwords. It's, even though it's a administrator level password that's usually set out there like 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 published on the internet at default. Hardening the password, full password management, settings for timeout, lockout, all that kind of stuff. It
Yep.
is not being done. So we got them at a lighter price point on that to try to stimulate the complacency movement.
Yeah, I'm curious. I don't know on the top of my head, but is there like an ISO standard or any sort of prescriptive security standard that covers all of these types of devices and that like is something that some of these larger organizations try to achieve, and then they have to come in and get an auditor and they have to use Symphion to help manage like this huge influx of printers and random endpoints on their devices or on their networks?
Yes and no. Okay.
Yes and no. Okay.
So NIST is, let's start with the CVEs, what you were talking about earlier, the scanning and vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
They don't self-report that much, and there's a dearth of CVEs on the printers. It's just what the printer manufacturers decide they're going to do, right? It's not like the competitive environment that other endpoints have.
Mm.
National Vulnerability Database or anything like that, or SCAP type scanning. NIST came out in 2015 with an IR. I think it's 8023 IR. It was a standard just for replication devices. Okay, and they subsumed that into the current NIST without really referencing the printer specifically. So it's a overall basic cyber hygiene approach to cybersecurity. So we're standards based program. We've got NIST, we've got the DESA STIG for the government built into it. There's a STIG on it too. So that's pretty solid guidance that we're basing that on.
For sure.
There are others out there, but man, this is blocking and tackling. It's just like
Yeah.
inventory. Okay.
Yeah.
Passwords, shut down the unused ports and protocols and communications. Is it secured is it, or certificates updated, involved, and stored?
Yep.
Because we're narrowing the time limit on certificates now because they've got to be changed. Are they being patched? Okay. And firmware in the printer space is a lot different because the firmware is not, they got the README file and the firmware to document it, but it's really not copiously documented because it could be something about the camera, the operation of the sorter or the OS, or it could have security updates, maybe. So, and people tend to hang on to their printers for a long time past the time when they're making firmware for them too. They've got a lot of devices out there that are unsupported. Think about your audience. Unpatched, unsupported end of life devices sitting out there with no users, no systems looking at it, no DLP, no nothing, and they don't know whether it's communicating off the network. They're not segmented.
They're right there inside your most like trusted inner space.
Yeah, and they are trusted endpoints because they're trusted to communicate with your email system. Somebody scans something to email it, scan it to file it, your file server system, your credentials, your LDAP system has got to communicate to that. So who's looking at that? Where are you going to find those printer security experts? It's a daunting task
It
that
is.
gets pushed down in priorities because it's not sexy like AI or anything like that. We've seen the hacks across the board on the printers. Nobody's talking about root cause now, man. So it's like I can't lay you statistics about how how likely am I to get hacked through my printer? I can't do it. It's, root cause is not published anymore. It's the lawyers hide it for a couple years. I'm exaggerating, of course, but it's not really at the forefront. You don't put it in a press release unless you're blaming somebody for it.
Right. Yeah, I get you. I hear you. And it's interesting. It's like these are businesses, right? So
Yeah.
like, even as a security professional, you're part of the business and you have to connect business success to your security programs that you're building. And it's really intriguing for me to hear about all of these things. And I'm sure it is for all of our listeners too, because I think it's one of these pieces that, you know, when we put just our security hats on, forget about the business for a second. Like the security hat can go on. You're only as good or as secure as your weakest link. And it's these things like printers that like will just kind of sneak in there. Someone like with all of the great intention in the world, like, oh, we need to be able to print out like all of this patient information or whatever. Like even for a smaller like private practice, a dental office or something, and then boom, there it is. That's your in as a security hole.
Yeah, it's supply chain too, John, because the big push like a DoD right now and other like in the financial industry is
Uh-huh.
supply chain. You got your lawyers, you got your accountants, you got everybody in the confidential information supply chain, not just the vendors like the HVAC vendor at Target or something like that, but you got all the vendors and it's all the way into the supply chain and everybody uses printers.
So let me ask you, if we fast forward into the future a little bit,
Yeah.
I'll let you decide how far into the future you'd like to go. What does success look like just going forward? You're already the world leader in helping secure all of
We
these.
want to be the de facto choice for everybody. We want to be the first name that they think of when they think of printer security. And it's man, it's like ball in the ocean. We have to make people aware of it. I mean, even you're a security podcast professional, and your audience is the top information security people around. Okay, and it's an alternate universe to you. So, we're having to go and talk a ton to raise this awareness, articles, a whole lot of effort to get the word out about it. And if they're not being digitized, they are to a certain extent, but in many, the volumes are up in the print. But it's not just that, that's tip of the iceberg. The other IoT devices, think about the cameras. How many IP
Oh, yeah.
cameras do you have on your network? They have an administrator password that needs to be hardened. They communicate via as old arcane SNMP versions that are unhardenable. They have, firmware that has to be updated. Those are things, and that's the number of Becker's healthcare, the big, periodical for healthcare. They said the number one and two IoT endpoints getting hacked in healthcare systems are the cameras and the printers. And
Yep.
then you've got all sorts of, with the proliferation of wireless, you've got all sorts of endpoints coming on the network that have to be protected. I mean, it's a gimme. It's not an exotic where I've got to have something sniffing the traffic on the network to identify something or anything. Let's just use the built-in features. Each manufacturer has incredible features built into the devices to protect them. They're just not being used, and they have to be programmatically enabled.
It
And
takes work to set that stuff up. You got to do some work.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
little bit of work. You got to
good.
maintain your security operations, your
And
security
it's
programs.
cost effective too, John. Nobody's gonna do anything unless it's a cost effective approach. And I submit that it's a very quick win. It's an affordable, quick, no operational lift win for the IS professionals to get behind.
No, I love it. And I love that there's incredibly smart people and dedicated folks like yourself, like thinking through and grappling with these, as you put it, like less sexy problems. It's not the latest and greatest AI thing, but it's important. But people don't even think about it when we go to the doctor's office, when we're calling up our broker, if we still have one of those. Like there are printers in those offices, and those are just as much part of the cybersecurity ecosystem as the laptops that have access to all sorts of incredible systems in them. So absolutely.
We make the analogy all the time that you've got if your printer's not in the data center, but it's servers that are comprised of all these server class capabilities in the hard drive that would be something that you would want to protect physically in your data center. And with all the technologies to monitor its communications and system administrators assigned to it and care and feeding that you would have with your servers, that you don't. And it's sitting out in the middle of your floor with walk-up access to it, and it's got all these capabilities. So it's like, and we're really the voice in the industry because the manufacturers, they're selling their devices, they're selling features, and the print managed print industry, the big industry, is driving cost out of it. And security is if you put it in terms of the cost of the risk, it's nothing, right? Because the risk is incredible for a ransom or a hack, or notifying people that the lawsuits, the regulatory
Just
violation.
look at GDPR. Just look at CCPA. Like,
Gosh,
you
yeah,
steal private information, it's expensive
yeah,
to recover from that.
and they don't know what they've got. I mean, just look at like we first got into it. It's like, hey man, can you connect to my scene? Security incident event management system, and we started talking to IBM about QRadar and some of the others. And it's like, the logs, we turn logging on, but the logs are filled on a printer with non-security events, just tons of non-security events that are like my tray is full or empty. Or
It's not a security thing that you need in your
my
SIM.
door is open, or and it's just a ton of non-actionable events. And then
Yep.
what are you going to do?
Yep.
Am I going to sort through that log file and find that event, and then send a ticket to the help desk, who's going to get some service vendor to manage, to go out and a truck roll to the device and do something about it? What's the time limit on that, man? I mean, it's like with us, we're monitoring it. We see it happen. We remediate it back, standing change control. So it's like, the idea is, look, let's put at least speed bumps in for what's going on with the AI. I mean, let's put, we can't do without the prayers. They're essential. You know, they're numerous. They're risky. We can't just ignore them. Continue to ignore them. It's just going to be our downfall to do that. So, I give a big shout out to the print industry to, look. I mean, let's get beyond brand a little bit and let's talk about this and with customers.
Unify that.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. I know I really appreciate all of that. That's it's a good perspective.
I
It's
throw a
good to
lot
be.
at you there, John. I'm sorry. It's
No, 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 nothing to be sorry about. Like, it's good. It's good. I'm super curious. With everything that you've seen and everything that you've built and all of the success that you've worked really hard towards, and the amazing future that you see in front of you as well. Like, if you could go back in time and meet your younger self, would you? And would you have any advice for yourself?
I've got 4 children, John, so I give them all that advice all the time. 2 sons, 2 daughters. You maybe get on this risk sooner, but it's got to marinate. I mean, it's just like anything else. We had to go through everything that we went through to get to this point. So that's a great question. Though. I don't know. I have to think about that and get back to you for next time or something.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I think you answered it really beautifully. The journey is what matters.
That's a good point. I mean,
Yeah,
it really, we're the sum of our experiences, right? It's like everybody's focused on new latest technology this, latest technology that, especially out where you are, right? I mean,
especially here in Silicon Valley. Yeah, you're in Texas, so
it really like the Truman quote, right? The only thing new in the world is the history you don't already know. So it's
yeah,
like
yes.
it's absolutely true. I mean, there's a ton of history with this particular endpoint, and it's not new that it's a risk. It's been a risk for a long time, and we learn from the sum of our history and innovate with that. So it's like I see this as no different from that.
I mean, hopefully we learn.
We're hesitant to go hard on the risk, because everybody does that, selling fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and it's risk. We said, look, we're going to step it up this year and start talking about the risk more, because our partners they have different approaches to it, and customers need to be aware of this and how easy it is to fix this. You can't eliminate the bad stuff, but you can sure mitigate it, and with some basic steps.
I love that. I love how you just phrase that. Like, It's so easy to fix this.
It is quick
It
win.
is. That's a quick one. It's an easy button. Well, thank you so much, Jim. This has been amazing. The CEO of Symphion, also the founder, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yep. Amazing. And thank you also to all of our listeners for tuning in to another episode of the Security Podcast of Silicon Valley. I'm the host, John McLaughlin, and this has been a YSecurity production. Thank you. Huge thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
One last thing before you go. Think about who you were 20 minutes ago. Maybe security's been that thing that's on your roadmap, that thing that you'll get to right after the next sprint, the thing that you'll get to after the raise or after something. But here's the truth. SOC 2 and ISO, these things are not just checkbox. They're keys. It unlocks enterprise deals. It opens up regulated industries. It's the difference between selling to a 10-person startup and closing Fortune 500s. That's where YSecurity comes in. We don't just advise, we build. SOC 2, ISO, done right the first time. 40 plus engineers from Apple, Uber, Microsoft, Robinhood, Brex. This is not guesswork for us. This is all we do. And maybe you're not the one who needs this, but you know a founder who does. The one trying to break into bigger markets, the one doing the 0 to 1 thing. Send them our way. We have an awesome referral program. We pay for introductions that turn into partnerships. So head to ysecurity.io/startups. The first 8 hours are free. 40 engineers, 1 full working day entirely on us. YSecurity has your back. See you in the next episode.